Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Head over to audibletrial.com/jumbled and get your free 30-day trial and a free audiobook. They've got over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Jumbled, your favorite podcast about nothing. I am Jonny, and you guys asked for it. Countless emails, phone calls, text messages, letters, carrier pigeons. Zach is officially fired, and I am taking over. Just kidding. Don't get too worried. Zach is out being a family man, working some extra hours to pay for a sweet vacation. So I'm going to take on my first ever solo podcast. And I'm not going to lie, I'm going to do this in one take. So you guys, you have to bear with me for the awkward pauses, the and probably some flubs and some confusion and some nervousness. And that it's very likely that this podcast will be a shorter one. Please forgive me, I'm new to this, somewhat new. I will say, small story, back in my time at GU, I was a GU radio host. I think I peaked at having 5 online listeners. One of them was myself. So yeah, running a solo podcast is hard. I am no Joe Rogan. Shout out to my boy, Joe. Joe Rogan, not Joe Oxley. He sucks at ping pong. But we won't go there tonight. I promise I won't rag on Joe Oxley for sucking at ping pong tonight. But what I did do was go out to Facebook and Instagram to get some topics. Because I was sitting here kind of thinking about this, and Zach and I talked, and we didn't want to do a re-release of the podcast. I felt like that was cheating you guys just a little bit, though I do like re-releases, and I love listening back to old content, especially from before I was on the podcast, because then you really get a good sense of how much better I made it. Just kidding, Joe, you're a great co-host. Oh, look, I'm doing it again. But I did go to Facebook to get some lighter topics, because I was planning, and I thought about going into some deep stuff, and I thought about going on Politic Parade or talking about guns, which I'm happy to do, but I got a pretty good amount of listener questions to go through. So I'm going to, get right to it. I'm only going to use first names, no relations, but you all know who you are when I say your question and your name. So thank you for sending some topics. I hope you guys enjoy my answers. If you want follow-ups, the best thing you can do is to reach out to us at Jumble Podcast. I think it's jumblepodcast@gmail.com. Zach's going to beat me for not knowing our own email, or the one that I do know, johnny.jumbled@gmail.com. That's the better one. I actually check that one. Mostly. Occasionally. Here and there. I probably should check it because there might be some questions in there. My bad. Anyways, let's get right to it. Our boy Larry, first question of the night. How and or why should you start a podcast? This is a fantastic question, and it's something that we've talked about a bit on this podcast, and also when I did the guest spot on Up and Coming podcast. I truly believe that it is the most used, or I guess most closely paid attention to form of social media, if you'd consider social media a media outlet. I love the creativity aspect to it. It's a great way to just hang out and shoot the shit with your friends. My dogs are going crazy. I'm sorry. No one's home. It's just me, and they're upstairs, and they're having a party, and they're just really trying to invite us all over, but that's not going to happen. Anyways, podcast. Why you should start one. 1, it's a great way to share your message. 2, it's a great way to hang out with your buds. That's one of my highlights of my week, is just getting to shoot the shit with Zach, or getting to interview other super creative or talented people. We do have some cool guests coming up, by the way. And an inspiration. I think hearing some of the feedback that I've gotten from friends and people that I don't know, or people that I never thought would actually care to listen to the podcast, saying that it actually brightens their day. I never thought that would be a thing that would happen for Jumbled or anything that, that includes my voice. I'm not a talented singer. You guys have heard, sound clips here and there of me doing warm-up singing for Zach, and sometimes I like to sing them little diddlies here and there, but I'm not a singer. And I never thought that something that would come out of my mouth would be so pleasing to a few thousand people's ears, but it's amazing. It's really cool to see your podcast grow. We haven't really talked about it, but Zach crunched the numbers, and for 2018, we had 148,000 listens, which is incredible. I think when Joe and Zach started this podcast, it was the same idea of we have funny conversations and let's share them, and whoever listens to them or likes them, they're welcome to participate. And if you don't, you know what? You're welcome to move on as well. I'm not here to force anyone to listen to it, but to know that we have a lot of repeat listeners, especially for a few months now, a couple years, 100+ episodes, it's pretty fucking cool, guys. And you know what? If you are like me and you get a little bit of pleasure out of brightening someone's day, I highly recommend doing a podcast. It's a great way to meet new people. Zach Klassen talked about how he uses his podcast to network. Brilliant, especially if you're in an industry that requires as much networking as show business. So Larry, share your message. You personally have an awesome message, and I'm excited to be a guest on your podcast. I'm excited for us to do some promo videos when I visit Louisville, and we're going to do some fun shit, and we're going to roll around, and maybe we'll record a podcast. I know you're thinking about it. I know you're getting ready to. I think you've been doing some writing. So just do it, man. You're a kind of guy. Just do it. Stephanie sent a few questions, so thank you. Tell us about a place you call home in a way that will convince everyone to move there. I thought a lot about this one because there's a lot of different things I could share. I could talk about the mountains and my love for the mountains and being outdoors. I thought about talking about my family farm that's just north of Edmonton, because I also love being out there with my grandfather and wandering around the gardens, eating strawberries, hunting animals, just spending time around the river and just being with family who I don't get to see as often as I'd like to. But what really it came down to is there's this tiny little place that I feel like I call home, and it's super cheesy, and it is in my parents' house, in their I don't know, I guess it's a living room, the non-TV room, the hosting room, I don't know what that's called, the coffee room, but there is a couch, a green couch. And when I was sick, when I was living with my parents, I would find myself leaving my bed and crawling down onto that couch and laying down, and I would get the best night's sleep there. No idea why, but just that little spot in the house, in this couch that was arguably a bit too small for me to fully stretch out on. I am a taller guy, bigger dude, but it just brings me such comfort. And that's the second place I stop when I visit my parents. The first is the fridge. My mom will can attest to this, that the first thing I do is I walk in, give my parents a hug, and I immediately go to the fridge. I don't know why. Force of habit, the fat kid in me, always looking for food. My mom typically stocks good snacky foods that I don't carry at home, and when I'm there, the diet kind of goes out the window. Not that I would want people to move there, though I will say my parents have housed my friends a few times, so if those of you are desperate and you need a place to stay, you call up Mama Shauna and see what we can make happen, but I will ask that you stay away from my couch, because I love that couch, and that is my secret little place that I call home. Stephanie again. Tell us about 10 places you would like to visit and why. 10 places. I'm definitely going to lose track, so our non-existent fact checker, don't keep count here, but I'll talk about a few. One of them coming up, Japan. I did spend a brief moment in Japan in 2008 or 9, flying through on the way to Thailand, and I loved it. It was cool. I'm excited to see more. Al and I are doing our honeymoon trip there for 3 weeks, and we're going to see as much of the country as possible. We're taking trains, we're taking planes, and we will probably take some automobiles, but really just eating some food. I'm going to train some jiu-jitsu at a couple cool gyms. We're going to see sumo. Pretty stoked on that. I jokingly said I was going to enter, but that would probably end poorly because I know it doesn't look technical, but it's definitely technical. And there's a lot of rules there. So Japan, 1. 2, I want to see more of Canada. I've seen a decent amount of it, but I truthfully haven't been that far east. I want to go to Newfoundland real bad, and I want to see some more of Ontario because that's a giant province, even though it's full of some yuppies. But I also know there's a lot of non-yuppies out there, so don't be giving me a hard time, Ontario listeners, or my family from Ontario, who are probably going to listen to this podcast because some of you gave me suggestions to talk about. So Japan, Ontario, Newfoundland. I have been to nowhere in Europe. I've seen a decent amount of Asia, but I have not spent a lot of time in Europe. Really want to go to the Netherlands. That's where part of my family is from. I think that could be a pretty cool trip. I would love to see Ireland. That's where a lot of Ali's family is from, and we've been talking about doing a trip there. Couldn't give you specifics in either of those places other than I just want to step foot in that country. I would, I had an opportunity to potentially go on a trip to Africa a few years ago, and I decided to not attempt that trip, and I really regret that. And I think that would be a really cool country. I met someone from South Africa and spoke really highly of it. Obviously, there's some risks like traveling to any foreign country, but I think seeing it from, seeing more of the world never hurts. I think any of the travel that I've done, really being, I really try to invest myself into the local culture and community. I'm not a big fan of touristy trips or touristy traps, but I will also say in my old age, I do really like staying home. And some of the stuff that, if I had some time for vacation to traveling within Alberta, there's stuff within Manitoba that I'd like to see. Go and see some friends back in Winnipeg. Shout out to my Winnipeg homies. I think that was like 4 or 5 or 6. Pretty, standard. I'd love to see Europe. That's a lot of countries. Love to see Africa. That's like 58 countries or something crazy like that. And, travel my country itself. It's so big. It's so vast. It's so different that, I think you could make a strong case to travel just within Canada and see quite a bit. So thank you, Stephanie. I think you got another one further down the list that I'll get to. That one's definitely going to be a hot topic. Moving on to Jake. 1 pizza topping for life. And he put in brackets on top of cheese and sauce because that is standard. That's mandatory for a pizza. And I learned weirdly when I lived in America that some places don't use pizza sauce on their pizza, which I thought was really fucking weird. It's not pizza. Then you're just talking about cheesy bread with some other toppings. So as you guys probably know, I am a meatitarian, a carnivore. If I'm getting pizza, I love maximum amounts of meat. If I had to just pick one type of meat, I'm probably going to go just the very standard classic pepperoni, but I want like a quality, thick cut, big slice pepperoni, and I don't want none of this two slices of pepperoni per pizza ration bullshit. Like, come on. If this is my one pizza that I'm going to eat for life, it is going to be double cheese, double sauce, just as much meat on top. And, I'm torn here. So I have 2 ways I like to eat pizza, and they're on very opposite ends of the spectrum. The first is double cheese, double sauce, all of the meat, extra crispy. The second, which is what I call the pizzerito, is you take all that basically, and then you soft cook it so that the crust is still very malleable. I want to be able to bend it. And then I roll it into a burrito. And yes, I have actually done this. As you guys know, I am 100% a fat kid through and through, despite what I look like on occasion, not being a fat kid. You see me when I let myself go or on a weekend when I'm cheating, and you all would be real scared. Anyways, pizzerito, that's where I would go probably, because then you can dip it in marinara sauce, which has beef. Is that cheating, Jake? Is that cheating if my dipping sauce also contains a topping? I don't know. That's a question. I look forward to you getting back to me. Following, do you think school detention / suspension does any good? No, not at all. Not at all. I think it does great for the kid who's getting suspended, who then gets a free week off to sit at home and secretly play video games. You know, sure, but is that really solving a punishment? I think most kids would say being at school is more of a punishment. I think there's creative ways to engage a kid to, towards better behavior. That's an interesting question, Jake. Are you thinking about suspending someone or putting them in detention? I would say actually detention is a decent deterrent, especially because one, you're forcing them to stay in school extra hours, assuming that is what detention still is. Classic detention is after school. But I do think that there's been some changes in what you can do, and then there's childcare and transportation, and there's obviously some risks with that. But I think detention definitely can be used. One, you're forcing the kid to spend more time in a place that he absolutely doesn't want to be. And let's be honest, the kids who really want to be at school aren't the ones getting detention. Two, you're using that detention productively so that they're doing homework, studying, maybe solving the problem or working out the issue that caused them to be in detention. I know you're not a teacher, but I'm suspicious about this question. There's something more to it. Jake continues with Jonny's top car tips for the everyday person. What should they be doing? Oh, baby. This could be a whole podcast. So this is the whole do what I say and not what I do situation. Because I love cars, as you all know, and I love working on cars. It has been a serious part of my life for as long as I can remember. Full disclosure, I will say that I am starting to fall, I don't want to say out of love with it. I think I just have other priorities. Simple car tips, though, what everyone should be doing: listening to their car. Getting used to starting your car, turning down the music, let it warm up, listen to the sounds that it's making so you get used to it. So then when there is this weird sound, you pick it up right away. I think what happens with a lot of people is they're so used to just abusing their car and using it as a point A to point B tool that they get in it, crank the tunes, having a good time, drive it, and those little problems that if you caught early would stay little problems go unnoticed until they become a big problem and you hear this big bang or this big clank or this big grinding noise, and then you're right fucked. So that, and I think basic maintenance, looking at your tires, it sounds silly, but actually walking around and checking all your tires, making sure they're inflated, listening to your car, watching your lights, being careful with what oil you use and getting oil changed on a regular schedule. It's pretty simple. I don't think it's definitely not rocket science with a car. Most modern cars are going to run pretty self-sufficient. I will say, don't always fall for the traps if you're doing your dealer maintenance and paying the crazy inflated prices at getting it done at a dealer. Always check for a local shop. Midas, no plugs for Midas here, but they're pretty cheap and they can sign your warranty book, and always fight that. Keep all of your receipts. I learned this somewhat the hard way a few years ago when I blew the motor in my truck. Thank you, Ford. You guys, don't buy a Ford. They will fuck you every chance they get. Sorry, Ford, and sorry to my friends who work at a Ford dealership, but here's the truth, and I'm going to speak it. So I blew the motor in my truck driving through BC, and they really wanted to fight me on it, even though it was still under warranty, and I had to dig up countless receipts for the last 3 years that I owned the vehicle, showing that I took great care of it. And I mean everything from wiper blades to oil filters to cabin air filters to maintenance took place at multiple dealerships because I lived in different places. And then anything like that. So having a good filing system, that was some actually like decent life advice for me. That was not as funny as maybe you were hoping. But yeah, that I would say is probably key. Keep your receipts. Don't overpay. Don't be afraid to shop around. And the other thing too is, just because your mechanic says you need to do it doesn't mean it's a safety issue. You can definitely ride out some things to the ground. Perfect example, I got told about, 15 months ago that one of our vehicles needed front struts, and I have not done them yet. And they're a little squeaky. And I noticed today on my drive home from the gym that they're definitely getting a little bit worse, and it's probably getting to the point where I should do it, not necessarily from a safety issue, but more of it's starting to annoy me because I can hear it now. And truthfully, I just had other priorities, and if I'm going to spend a couple hours changing struts on my car, I'd rather be working on the Corolla, and that's where those priorities come. But I should probably address that. And I'd say learning to do some of the maintenance by yourself. You'd be surprised at what you can learn just picking up a tool. Remember, worst case scenario is you're paying for a tow truck to get it to a shop to get it done right. Maybe you're out 50, 100, 150 bucks, but the gamble there is you might save yourself quite a bit. An oil change isn't hard. Learning to change a tire, definitely not hard. For those of you who have seen Human Centipede, you all know the value of changing a tire. That's all I'm going to say there. What is a fun fact of 2019 that I have learned so far? I've learned a lot of little things. I would say I've learned some fun facts about myself, especially around political views. I have become more and more open to political view changes, less set in my ways, if you will. Definitely more libertarian. But I've also learned, with all the craziness going on in the US and back at home in Canada with a provincial and a federal election coming up, that it's just a waste of time. Politics are a waste of time, and that's depressing, that there truly isn't a candidate that reflects my views. And I don't think that's a fun fact. That's maybe a sad fact. I wish I had something cool and witty to respond to that, but I'll think about it, and I'm going to write that down in the jumbled book, and maybe I'll have something better for the next episode, Jake. I feel like I let you down on that one. Time travel. What time period would you go to? This is a real easy question. The 80s, and I would invest in every currently booming technology company. Apple, Microsoft, Google. I think Google was more like mid 90s, but still you get the drift. Or, maybe last week, and I would take the winning lottery numbers from that I know are going to happen, and I'd buy that ticket, and then, do what I really want to do with my life, and, have money, take some time off of work, or at least work for my passion. And as you guys know, I work in fund development, the philanthropic industry. So I am one of those lame people that actually have a list of places that I would donate money to when I win the lottery. And I say when, because I truly mean that. I believe that you put it out there and it's going to come back to you. And I'm just waiting. It's coming. I know it's coming. But I think, going to the future might be cool, but also terrifying. Because then you go to the future and say you don't like what you see in the future, and you survive and you manage to come back. Imagine having that pressure of having, is it your responsibility then to alter the future? And what could one person really do? And how would you do that? Would that be your life mission? And how do you fund that mission? That's stressful. Same thing as, going too far back in time and altering the timeline. One small move and maybe you don't exist, and then you get into this weird time loop of, could that even happen? Because you go back to to make that difference, and would it just reset itself? I don't know, man. Timelines are pretty fucking scary. And then you never know, right? You might stop one bad thing and lead to an even worse thing. So there's a lot of pressure with time travel, I think. And the butterfly effect, the smallest little ripple, can have a pretty significant outcomes either way, or responsibilities, which is why I'm going to cop out and say to last week with the winning lottery numbers, buying a ticket, winning $50 million, and living my life with the one goal of, making everyone else's lives around me that much better. I think that's reasonable, right? That kind of answers the question. Going on to Jared, who we did actually talk about having you on the podcast. And if you're listening to this one, send me a message and we're going to schedule it, because I know you have a lot of stories. I know you have a lot of stories because I've heard some of them and I would love to hear them. And now we're in a position where you can share even more of them without any worry. So Jared's question is Vancouver or Toronto, who is more smug? And he said, just kidding. But this is a real question, and this has been on my mind for a little bit. So those of you who listen regularly know that I live in Alberta. We are the Texas of Canada. I would say we're fairly redneck. And I'm okay with that. I'm comfortable with that. My wife and her family are all from the Toronto area. So there's some danger here. And my little sister lives in Vancouver. So, full disclosure, I have spent more time in Toronto than I have in Vancouver. I will say, I think I like Toronto more, but I would never live in either city. They're smug in different ways, Jared. Very different ways. So, Toronto is this like, we're better than everyone because we're the center of the universe, even though they're the eastern part of Canada, and they will say they're central Canada, but if you draw a fucking line, they're clearly on the east of it. And that, fashion hits there first and music hits there first. And, everything that makes its way to Alberta is like 6 months to a year behind because Toronto is at the cutting edge of it. They are the biggest city area in Canada. So sure, it's pretty cool. Vancouver on the other side. Now I have this little personal vendetta with Vancouver right now because there's a lot of tree hugging hippies out there. And not that it's a bad thing. I am very pro environment and I believe in taking care of our environment. So don't be jumping on the ban Jonny bandwagon here. But I have some deep rooted frustrations with the tree huggers out there who are anti-pipeline, anti-energy, anti-hunting, and are literally just putting up roadblocks for the sake of putting up roadblocks simply because they can, especially with oil and gas. Like I said, Alberta being the Texas of Canada, we are an oil-rich province. We are a have province, and we've really done more than our fair share of funding this great country for years. Could we have been better with how we managed that money? 100%. No doubt about it. We could have been better. There's always room for better. But we have this interesting opportunity or challenge that we have right now where we struggle to move our own product and we are forced to then sell it at a discounted price directly to the US, who then sells us back refined products for an elevated price, which is, anyone who's in business would say, hey, we have one customer, the US, who is also one of the top 5, at least guaranteed the top 10 oil producing nations in the world. So we have one product that we're trying to sell to one customer who doesn't fucking need it. And we're okay with that. And we're fucking ourselves on a daily basis, costing Canadians billions of dollars, hundreds and hundreds of millions, billions of dollars, countless money that we could be investing back into our own country to support social services that we do need, that we should be supporting, saving some stuff, saving some money, which would be awesome. The other part of it that frustrates me is that we're dealing with that on the west, that we can't get a pipeline to the coast. And then on the east, they're quite content with getting in Saudi oil through other methods that are a lot more dangerous than a pipeline. And, there's some human rights issues with Saudi. And it's just frustrating from an Albertan to say we have this fairly ethically harvested resource that we can do in-house, but we can't ship product anywhere or develop it here because we have two countries who, by the way, get equalization payments from Alberta so that they can maintain their great quality of life that they have while limiting our ability to create more money. It's just very ironic. It doesn't make sense. It's ass backwards. We know we're moving away from oil as an energy resource. 100% I agree we have to, but I don't think we can just go cold turkey on it.
Let's take a hot second to stop and talk about our sponsor for today's podcast. You guys know them. You guys love them. It's Audible. Head over to audibletrial.com/jumbled and get your free 30-day trial and a free audiobook. We've talked about them over and over again. If you guys have not yet taken advantage of the opportunity that is in front of you right now, it's a golden opportunity. Please do. You get a free book. A free audiobook. I don't know how else to explain it. You sign up for the trial, you get the free audiobook, and then anytime within the 30 days, you can cancel, and you'll get to keep your audiobook. It's a free audiobook, guys. You'll get to keep it, you'll get to listen to it over and over again, and you know what? That sounds like a win-win situation to me. The audiobook that I'm going to recommend for this month is Girl Logic by Eliza Schlesinger. If you guys have not heard about Eliza Schlesinger, it's a mouthful of a name. She is a comedian. Super, super funny. This book, this audiobook just talks about how women's minds, how they work, and how sometimes women can obsess over details that men wouldn't even notice. She talks about a characteristically female way of thinking that seems to be contradictory and circuitous at the same time, but is actually complicated and highly evolved. I think we can all agree that when you think about male versus female minds, if you had to pick the brain that is more highly evolved, you're going with the woman. I'm just thinking personally, I can only do one thing at a time. My wife does 14 different things while I'm trying to figure out the one thing that I'm doing. So anyway, that's the audiobook that I'm going to recommend this month. But hey, if you guys don't want to listen to Girl Logic by Eliza Schlesinger, they have over 180,000 different audiobooks that you can choose from. And it's not just comedy. They have audiobooks on everything. They even have Audible originals now that you can check out. So there's going to be something that you can find and dig into and really get something out of. And you should really go take a look at them. They got a lot to offer. And now that I have plugged that, I will just tell you one last time, head over to audibletrial.com/jumbled. Let's get back to the podcast.
Let's be honest, we can't go cold turkey on it. Oil products make up for 95% of everything you use on a day-to-day basis. It's in your fucking toothpaste, people. Think about it. It is literally everywhere. I love when I see anti-pipeline protests, and especially when it's in the ocean and people are riding plastic kayaks. Yo, dude, where the fuck do you think that kayak came from? What is that kayak made out of? You're cutting down trees? The other irony in it is BC's industry is fishing, logging, and mining. And then when you go, further out east, you're looking at mining again, some fishing. And that a couple of those provinces just dump raw sewage into all their water sources. So that's okay. But, heaven forbid we try and move, this oil across the country in a super secure and safe pipeline where we're already covered in pipelines and it's really low risk and there's a lot of safety measures. So let's just cripple our country. I kind of guess I went a little bit political on that one for you, Jared. So if I had to pick who I'm more mad at right now, I would say Vancouver. But overall, I would say in my experience, people from Toronto out east are more smug. That was good. We got a little deep on that one. All right, going on to Mona. If you were a dessert, what kind of dessert would you be? So this is a loaded question because I used to work with Mona, and this was a group activity that I wasn't part of where some of my colleagues got together and they started assigning desserts to people. What dessert represents this person most likely or the best. And I got lemon meringue pie, which I will say a few years ago when I found out about this, I was deeply upset about being compared to lemon meringue pie because, I just thought I was a little bit more with it because, lemon meringue pie, it's tangy. It has weird crusty whipped cream meringue in it that I don't really like. And it's probably the worst pie, really. It's kind of like a Jello yogurt combo of yellow puke. And I thought I was a little bit cooler, you know? I always thought I was like a hip New York cheesecake or, good old wholesome chocolate chip cookie. I'm simple, but always a good go-to. But after some deep, deep self-reflection and getting into it, I am probably a lemon meringue pie. I am a little crusty. I'm definitely tangy. I would say not everyone likes me, but those that do are pretty serious about it, and I'm okay with that. And yellow, it's not a great color, but I don't mind it. I can rock a good yellow shirt here and there. Reminds me of summer and sunshine and happiness, so I think there's some redeeming qualities of lemon meringue pie. I would say I'm not as opposed to it now. On the cusp of saying fully accepting it, but I don't know. What do you guys think? Write into to Jumbled and let us know if Zach and I were desserts, which would we be and which one would you eat first? That's the important part. Which one would you eat first? So, Zach, my co-host who bailed, good job, Zach, way to bail, asked a very, very thoughtful question. And I don't even know if it's a question or more of an explanation, but he said, why Zach is more attractive than Jonny. This is a tough one, Zach, because we need to talk about attraction as a whole or a specific body part, because I know there's some that I got you beat on, but I will say there is a big craze right now around male facial hair and beards, and even though I won the beard off of 2009, and you will protest against that statement, but we have photographic proof that I won the beard off of 2008 or 2009, whatever year it was, your beard is stellar, and that baby will carry you a long ways. So if I had to say why you are more attractive than me, I would say it's the beard. But you shave that bad boy off and everyone sees you got no chin and that rockin' dad bod. By the way, we need to do a weight update because I'm getting ready to wrestle the living shit out of you. The beard. That is why, Zach. I'll admit it. You grow better beard. It's fuller, it's higher, it connects in all the right places. It's just good. It's who you are. It's just who you are. And as much as my beard is who I am, I still get beard envy, and you know what? I'm just gonna have to accept that. I'm gonna have to live with that. It's tough, but I'll do it. Lori asks, rice or beans? What's the better side dish? So there's a little bit of a inside joke to this one, which I won't get into. But you had to know I was going to go with beans because beans, protein, and no carb, well, lower carb. And they're just, I think they're more diverse. You can eat them whole. You can eat them fresh. You can eat them cold. You can eat them warm. You can mash them into this gross brown paste that looks a lot like poop, but is very delicious. It goes into burritos, which I also love. I've never thought about putting beans into a pizzerito. I feel like I gotta do some science in this and seeing how I can work some refried beans into a pizzerito. Or is that just a burrito? I think we're onto something here, folks. Like, we need to figure this out. But yeah, rice. I have learned to appreciate rice more, a little bit. I like it with cilantro. I like it with spinach or beet leaves, but I don't eat it that much because it goes right to my belly. And I've been working real hard on getting these abs showing a bit more, and rice gives me good energy, but it also gives me a good belly, and I try to avoid that. But beans, you know what? Beans have never steered me wrong. I've never had a bean dish where I've said, I feel fat after eating this. But I'll tell you what, you eat a couple cups of rice and you're going to feel real fat, especially if you don't cook it all the way. Don't make that mistake, people. It will expand in your stomach. It will suck, a lot. All right. Moving on to a question from Adam. Talk about why the Oilers are stuck in a perpetual state of mediocrity. So this one is very near and dear to Adam and I because we're both Edmonton Oilers fans. That's hockey for our listeners who don't follow hockey in the NHL. Adam was born near Edmonton and has stayed true to his Oilers roots. I grew up in Edmonton and will always love the Oilers. And I think that is the root of the problem. Oilers fans are diehard because we had an amazing dynasty. We had Wayne Gretzky. We had, all the other great players that go with that dynasty, that we all are just holding on to something that most of the diehard fans now weren't even alive when this happened. And at the end of the day, we're still going to go to games. We're still going to buy the shirts. Fuck, I'm wearing one right now. I am wearing an Oilers shirt right now. Be honest, I have somewhat stopped watching the Oilers because it is depressing. I get really excited, and every year we think we're going to rebuild. And I would say 19 times out of 20, we don't rebuild. And we occasionally get a good showing. We had a decent playoff run a couple years ago. We have the best player in the NHL, and we still can't fucking win. The reality is, ownership doesn't give a fuck because they're still making money. The only way that team actually changes, actually addresses the systemic issues that they have in the upper management is if people stop going and stop buying. And that's never going to happen. That is simply never going to happen. We have made this bed, and we did like full hospital corners on those sheets, and then we stitched them into the mattress so there's no one tucking that bitch. We're stuck with this bed. We made it. This is our life. And I'm honestly really tired of the organization blaming players and blaming coaches because in the last, 10 or 11 years, we've been through, 9, 10, 11 different coaches, 9, 10, 11 number one draft picks, and it's not making a fucking difference. So, how long can you keep doing the same thing over and over again and finding a new person to blame until you realize that the common denominator is yourself and you need to fix that? And a perfect example of this is players who do poorly here, who are supposed to be highly rated, going to change his team, get to Edmonton, suck ass. They go to a different team and they fucking blossom and they excel and they revamp that organization that they're playing for now, and they have breakout seasons. It's not that they got better. It's not that they're practicing different. It's not like they're playing with better talent. Sometimes that is the case, but we have a lot of good talent and we waste it because there's something going wrong. The other issue, simple fixes, which is a little bit contradictory to what I just said. We could do a better job at investing in goalkeeping and defense. And we're always trying to get the discount, bin or the up and coming goalie or someone else's good backup who maybe will make a starter. And we don't spend the money where we should. And we are getting better. And I think we've made some moves that are promising, and we are still technically at this point in the playoff hunt, though I'd give us a snowball chance in hell to make it. It's there. We have the team. But there's something going on in upper management. There's something in that locker room that's cancerous, that's just dragging that team down, that organization. And the only way it will be addressed is if suckers like me stop buying the shirts and going to games and watching them on TV and talking about them in a positive light and remaining hopeful. They are capitalizing on our hope, people. And it sucks. And now I'm really depressed thinking about this. Thanks, Adam. Great. Real nice. Okay, we're shooting back to Stephanie, who had probably my favorite question of today. So great debate. The razor or the wax, which is truly better for the manzillion? And I can't I don't know if I know exactly what a manzillion is, so I'm going to take a quick Google search here. Manzillion. I should have done this before. I apologize, guys, but you know what? I'm by myself, so you're just going to have to live with that. Maybe it was manscaping. Quick Google, not really showing anything right away. Men's laser hair removal. I would say laser is maybe the best. Oh, okay, I found it. The manzillion, also known as the boyzillion, guyzillion, or back, sack, and crack. This is how we at Manzillion differentiate between a Manzillion wax and a Hollywood wax. The Manzillion equals crack up to the sack and shaft, then either a tidy or shaped pubic area. Wow. All right. So I want to go back to my question from Jake about a fun fact I learned in 2019, and that's it. I just learned what a manzillion is. So I think this is pretty easy. Wax is probably the most painful but effective or longest lasting. I feel like a razor is tedious and dangerous. I'm also a little bit concerned that my mom liked this question and said, love this one. Do I want to know how you know this, Mom? Do you know what a manzillion is? I'm deeply concerned that I am so out of touch that you know what a manzillion is and I don't. And you know what? I take that question back. I don't want to know. I don't want to know how you know that. Not at all. So I have used wax before, not in those areas. That's a pretty sensitive area. The skin is pretty thin there and, you know, around the bits and bites. But I've used wax before in some shoulder areas and arm areas, and I think that works beautifully. It grows back slower. I find it to be less itchy. I will say a story back to Jonny in grade 9, the first time I decided to shave my genitalia area, and I had no fucking clue what I was doing. Bought a razor from Walmart. It was the cheapest one because, you know, I was cheap, and I, again, didn't know what I was doing. Hopped in the shower. Again, didn't know what I was doing. I was like, water is nice. That will help, and it'll just wash it all down the drain. And I went to town. And like, I didn't know. I, you know, did the pubis. I did the gooch. Even did the butt crack. And I was like, whoa, that wasn't too bad. I only cut myself a couple times. And I was pretty proud. What I didn't realize was that when you first start shaving, you shouldn't shave against the grain, which I did. So I was shaving up. So I got real close shave. Also, what I didn't know is the benefits of using hot and cold water to help your pores. So I had about a day of beauty. And the next day I got that beloved razor burn, which burns and sucked and hurt. And anytime any hair, you know, anything got on there, soap when I was showering, was not enjoyable. And I had that all over my private bits, you know, from pubis to butthole. That whole area was just fucking on fire. And just when that started to relieve itself, and I thought I was, you know, out of the woods, pun intended, I got to that lovely part of where the hair starts growing back. And that itch is something that I will never forget. Roughly 20 years later, almost 20 years later, I still remember the feeling of that intense itch all over my underpants region. Fucking miserable. So, after reading that quick Google, I would say, I'm going to switch it on you and go laser. Just get it all done. Be gone. Though, you know, I think a little bit of stubble is good. It's kind of manly. You don't want to look like a fresh baby. That's kind of weird. Maybe some people are into that. I know there's that like whole I'm a baby diaper fetish thing, but you know, I would probably go maybe not laser either. Trimmers. Just keep it tidy, you know? Be respectful, look good, look manly, but look like you care. Put in that little effort for that special someone, you know? They'll appreciate it. No one likes a mess. That's all I have to say about that. So going on to my boy Matt, I think there should be a Matt segment where you talk about our first date. So I'm pretty impressed that Matt wanted me to talk about this because I remember our date, I think, much differently than he does. So you guys know I'm married to a woman, but Matt would be my unofficial official boyfriend, and Allie was away. She had moved back to Calgary, and I was still living in Winnipeg. I'm giving away some of where you live, Matt. I hope you don't mind. I know you're out, and it doesn't really matter, but try and keep some people's privacy to themselves, which is why I'm surprised you want me to talk about this. But I'm sensing some motives here. And I was kind of lonely and sad, and Matt and another friend of ours, Scott, we decided to go out on a double date, and Scott brought his girlfriend, I believe, and then we went out with Lacey and Jesse, Lacey's been on the podcast, and Matt was my date, and we went to a teppanyaki place, a Japanese restaurant where they cook on the fancy grill in front of you and do knife tricks and yell and flip cups of rice at you, and you catch eggs, pretty interactive. And I got a little handsy with Matt, and I was still drinking at the time, and I was feeling good, and I was playing it up, and I'm pretty sure the really old Japanese lady who was our server was a little bit confused. Like, I wasn't like holding his hand and giving him a kiss or anything, but she kind of gave us looks like she assumed that we were together. So me not being shy or afraid of expressing any kind of sexuality, I went for it. So I started rubbing Matt's back and putting my arm around him and giving him sweet eyes when she'd come around. And Matt got really embarrassed. And I was hurt. I put myself out there for you, Matt, and you mostly left me hanging. And I've never recovered from that rejection. I'm not gonna lie. It is sitting with me deep. I know we've had follow-up dates that have gone much better, and we've hung out, a lot more since then. So clearly we're on the right path. I've learned that, I'm a fast-moving kind of guy, and you're a bit of a slow-moving gal, and I've had to adjust my strategy, but I'm happy where we're going. So yeah, that was our first date. Freaking out old Japanese people, and I would say even maybe pushing Matt's boundaries a little bit. I think I caught you off guard. I don't think you expected me to be, that comfortable to go full public holding your hand. But I have no regrets, Matt. No regrets. You have a good manicurist, by the way. So the last question of the night comes from TJ. If you could have lunch with one person, alive or dead, who would it be? This is a tough one. I love this question. It's a great interview question. You hear it all the time, and I've thought a lot about it in the last couple hours about how I would respond or what I would say to this. And I don't know. Like, I thought about some funny answers. I was like, yeah, dead. Maybe Michael Jackson, so I can, he's already dead, so he doesn't care. So then we could just say, like, yo, did you really diddle those kids? We all know he did. We should bleep that out, actually, allegedly. And then I thought, what would be some cool, other historic figures that I would want to have lunch with, that are maybe dead. And I thought, Paul Walker. I always loved Paul Walker and Cars, but at the end of the day, like, he's just an actor. Is that really meaningful? I'm not really a spiritual guy, so I don't know if any, spiritual people. Gandhi maybe would be kind of cool, but I don't think we would see eye to eye because, I'm somewhat of a aggressive or violent person, and I like eating meat. I like eating in general. Is that poor taste in joke? Sorry, guys. I don't mean to offend anyone. People that are living, I don't have a lot of super cool, fancy celebrities. Joe Rogan, I feel like that's such a fucking cop-out because, I'm always riding his dick on this podcast, but I truly think he's a super interesting guy. Would love to roll with him. We're into a lot of the same stuff. We love hiking. We love hunting. We love jiu-jitsu. We love fighting. We love cars. I think we, that jives pretty good with me. If I had to think of, kind of my fanboy it would be Davey Havoc from AFI, who's probably who my mom is thinking. Like, why would you not say Davey, you dumbass? AFI is my all-time favorite band. I love Davey. I think he's super creative. So it'd be maybe cool to talk to him and share what his music has meant to me over the last, God, how long have we been listening to AFI for? Since like 93? Fuck, I'm old, guys. Yeah, I don't know. I wish I had a cooler story. I feel like whenever someone asks this question, they always have this deep and meaningful and creative response, and I'm just kind of like, oh, I don't know. This guy who likes things that I like, he likes jiu-jitsu, I like jiu-jitsu, or, he likes cars, so that's cool. I don't know. That's another one I'm going to have to put some deeper thought into, because you can really get into some interesting cans of worms, can of worms, monkey in a barrel. I don't know. Pick your choice, really. But yeah, I would probably, the easy default would be Joe Rogan, just because he's really cool. I find him inspirational. He's super smart, and I could, maybe use him to get some more Instagram likes, and we can grow the podcast more. Selfish, sure, call me selfish, but you know what? Hey, the more successful Jumbled is, the more successful my friends are too, and the more opportunities we have to showcase the awesome creative people on the podcast. Speaking of, great segue, John. Oh, I don't even fucking need Zach. I'm just yammering for like an hour now. God, I thought this was going to be short. We're rolling up over 50 minutes now. So some future guests coming up on the podcast. We are going to bring back season 2 of the conspiracy series with Jer. Definitely some of my favorite episodes. We're going to put some more prep work into it. Truthfully, I did ask if he wanted to just randomly come on this week, but Jer, being true to his nature and doing his due diligence, he said no, and that if he was going to come on, he wanted to do our listeners right, and he wanted time to prepare and figure out what we were going to talk about. So my thoughts, Jer, because I know you're going to listen to this episode, will be: 1, I want to talk about the stuff that we talked about in the previous episodes that have strangely come true. So there is some, Jer's maybe not as crazy as we all thought. No offense, Jer, I love you. But some of the shit you say is out there. But some of that out there shit is starting to come to light. And personally, I'm a little bit scared about it. Would love to get into, some, maybe a little bit of politics, which I know is a sensitive topic, but we'll dip our toe in there. Love a good alien story. Would like to get into some of the conspiracies around, this breaking news around rich people bribing to get their kids into university, and how that is potentially linked to the sex ring, and how basically once you're a millionaire, you're just a piece of shit human. I'm learning that there are great people out there that are millionaires. I work with a lot of them. I don't want that to come out the wrong way, but there is a certain level of celebrity status that you get where you just think, Aunt Becky can just pay her kids' way into prestigious schools, ultimately, taken away from a spot from a more deserving kid. And you know what she should have done with that money is maybe invested it into tutoring for her kid, or, better parenting skills for her kids so they wouldn't grow up, a snotty brat. Not that I'm saying that her kids are snotty brats, but, that would be the easy way out for me to go, to say, yeah, you were rich, your kid grew up rich, and he didn't have to work for anything, so why would he work for school? He knows mommy will pay his way to get there. The flip side would be, what if you were that kid? What if you were that kid and you truly thought you got into Harvard or Stanford or wherever on your own accord, and then the news breaks that actually, no, mommy and daddy just committed fraud to get you to the school. Do you stay in that school? Do you get removed from that school? Like, is Harvard and Stanford and Yale like kicking these kids out now that this news story broke? Like, what happens? How fucking embarrassing would that be? So you know what? Now that we've worked through this, I can see both sides of this. So yeah. So we're gonna have Jer on. We're getting back into conspiracy series. Look forward to that. We are going to bring on some small entrepreneurs. We're going to bring on my boy Greg, who is probably the smartest person I know. We're going to talk about AI and the app that he's developed that's booming. So we're going to talk about being an entrepreneur, working in programming, artificial intelligence and where it's going, and his list of pros and cons for it. And we're going to get Lacey back on. We're trying to figure out some creative avenues for Lacey. We have some things in the mix, but I don't want to say anything because we're still working on some details. But she definitely will be back on with some more stories. Jared talked about you. We're going to get some stories from you about what it's like working with young adults and university students. I know you got some good stories. Pretty excited. We'll probably see the return of our boy Larry, especially once he gets his act together with the podcast that he's bringing out. We're definitely going to help promote that. We're still waiting to hear some breaking news from Zach Klassen about his auditions and what he's doing, but I know he's working hard. So make sure you're giving all those people a follow, support Jumbled, and support our guests, because they're all incredible people who are working the hardest. And we're just really a community that's trying to support each other and make everyone's dreams come true. It's really not about being better than the person next to you. It's about helping that person be better in general, which will then make you better as well. Anyways, we're going to wrap it up. I'm going to throw it to Zach to put in his 2 cents, but I don't even think he deserves the opportunity to put in his 2 cents, but I can't remember the outro. So Zach, take it away. Do the outro, my man. Thank you all. I'm Jonny. This is Jumbled Podcast. Thank you for listening to me ramble for about an hour now. I hope you enjoyed it. Take care.
How about that for a showing, guys? Jonny really knocked it out of the park. You know what? I think he's been lying to me this whole time. I don't think he's been co-hosting just Jumbled. I feel like he's got some sort of secondary podcast that he's got some chops. He's got some solo podcast chops. So Jonny, great job, bud. Sorry I couldn't be there. Trying to get that money. Sometimes you got to prioritize things that you don't necessarily want to prioritize, but it just has to be done. So anyway, really appreciate you, bud, stepping your game up there and doing what you needed to do for the podcast. Much respect. Guys, if you want to check us out on social media, that would be at Jumbled Podcast, wherever you want to search. If you want to send us any emails, that'd be jumbledpodcast@gmail.com or johnny.jumbled@gmail.com. Remember, dick pics only in that account. If you would so kindly, please visit our sponsor, Audible. Head over to audibletrial.com/jumbled and get your free 30-day trial and a free audiobook. It's a great deal. Don't want to miss out on that. And head over to patreon.com/jumbled. Pay $500 and get us an address, please. At this point, we're just begging. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I really enjoyed listening back to it. Make sure to check back next week when hopefully it'll be both Jonny and myself back in the saddle again. By the way, wherever you're listening is just fine, but please head over to iTunes and leave us a rating and review. It does help out a lot. And we're looking to diversify our sponsors, our offerings a little bit for you guys, so you guys don't just always have to hear Audible. So anyway, head over. Obviously, do that Audible trial, like I said before, but also leave us a 5-star rating, because you are 5-star friends of the podcast, and we appreciate you. Okay. Guys, we will be back next week for another episode of Jumbled, your favorite podcast, about sometimes having to just do this shit solo. Right, Jonny? See you guys.
Hey, Zach. Eat a dick for abandoning me and adding to my abandonment issues. That's right. I fucking went there. And you have no idea where this shit show's gonna go. But this is all for you. Dinner.